Microscopic Milton is very small indeed. He lives in a clock on the mantelpiece in the parlour of a house that belongs to a lady named Mrs. Witherspoon. No one knows he's there, apart from Milton's friend Douglas, who spends most of his time asleep in front of the fire, and of course, you. It was very early indeed when Milton was woken by the sound of the door slamming. There goes Douglas out for his early morning walk, he thought, and went straight back to sleep. Douglas wasn't always in the mood for his early morning walk. In fact, recently Mrs. Witherspoon had noticed a distinct lack of enthusiasm. "You really are getting quite unfit," said Mrs. Witherspoon on the way home. "And I can't help noticing that you've put on a little weight." Douglas realized that she was right. But as far as he knew, getting fit involved exercise or dieting, and Douglas didn't like the idea of either. Later that morning, Milton went to visit Douglas. He climbed up to his ear for a chat, as usual. "Whew. That climb gets harder every day," panted Milton. "We really are out of shape. It's time we got ourselves fit again. Plenty of exercise and a healthy diet. That's what we need." Just what I was afraid of, thought Douglas, but he had to agree. Milton decided to draw up a fitness plan. Early the next morning, Douglas was taken for his walk as usual, and Milton decided to do the same. He took several deep breaths and set off on a long walk of his own, all the way from one end of the mantelpiece to the other. When Douglas arrived home, he went straight to his bowl in search of breakfast, but Milton was waiting. "Not so fast," said Milton. "No more of that fattening dog food for you. Here, eat this delicious lettuce leaf instead." When they'd finished their breakfast, Milton took Douglas into the garden to begin the real exercises. "Oh dear," thought Douglas, "is this really necessary?" "The first exercise," announced Milton, "is jogging round the garden. You give me a head start, because my legs are much shorter than yours." Milton set off at great speed, but despite the head start, Douglas soon caught up with him. The next exercise on the agenda was weightlifting. Douglas had to lift his heaviest bone into the air, whilst Milton had to lift a cocktail stick with a cherry on each end. Unfortunately, a passing sparrow decided that the cherries would make a delicious snack. Throwing and catching a ball was the next exercise. "Now," said Milton, "the trick here is to keep your eye on the ball." Milton and Douglas exercised till lunchtime. Douglas was waiting sadly for Milton to fetch his lettuce leaf when Mrs. Witherspoon suddenly put an enormous slice of homemade steak and kidney pie in his bowl. "I know you shouldn't really be eating this," she said, "but you're such a good dog, and besides, I love you just the way you are." Too much exercise can be bad for you, thought Douglas. And strangely enough, Microscopic Milton thought the same.